Okay, by show of hands, who wants to follow along today? Great. Okay. Thanks for bringing your laptops. This will be really fun. What I'm going to show you is actually only going to take like 10 minutes if there's no questions. So we're going to go slow, make sure everybody's on the same page, and feel free to ask questions in between. So who knows what Astro is? Raise your hand if you've heard of it or you know kind of what it is. Austin, I know I heard you talking about it, so.
You sure?
No, you're talking about something else?
I think so.
Oh, what's your name?
Awesome.
Yeah, that's what I said. Okay, cool. So basically, you know, they talk about this as the content-driven websites. So what does that mean? So if you go to like a dynamic web application, it needs to have a database. It needs to be refreshing and constantly changing. This is more for something like a blog or a portfolio page that's changing maybe less than every hour, right? So blogs are great because they kind of have a static content. Once you write an article, it's up there. It's not going to change a lot. And you can basically just compile all of your site into HTML and then have a server serve just the HTML. So then you take out all of the latency and slowness that goes along with databases and you know, processing requests and looking things up and having logic. And so your site is going to be extremely fast. So that's basically what it is. So let's go to this page. This is where you'll want to follow along. The website is astro.new. All right. So basically the idea with Astro is they have a lot of what they call themes or templates. And with those, you can create all different kinds of sites, and you can use Markdown to actually create the content. So you don't even need to use HTML or no HTML. And share this. And so on this page, you can kind of see all of the templates, and they have tons more things that you can do. Okay, so would you guys rather me do a portfolio or a blog page?
Portfolio. So,
Portfolio. Okay, let's do it. So basically, there's two options for you. You can open in StackBlitz. Well, actually, let's go into the view repo. So go ahead and click on view repo. And once you get in here, it's going to give you three options. You can do StackBlitz, CodeSandbox, and GitHub Codespaces. The advantage of GitHub Codespaces is that if you have a GitHub account, you can automatically save everything there. And basically, it's all in one setup for you. So let's actually. Gitpod is different. So GitHub's their competitor. So GitHub created this thing, Codespaces, and the idea is when you launch it, you're launching an IDE and a remote server that can run all your code and let you edit the code and show you what it's going to look like without installing anything on your system. Gitpod is basically the same thing, but it's an independent company called Gitpod. And the nice thing about GitHub is that toward the end of the presentation, what we're going to walk through is how to deploy the site. So if you have an account on cloudflare.com, then you can deploy today, or you can sign up. It's pretty quick. Regardless of what kind of plan you want for hosting, this kind of site, a blog or portfolio site, is going to be free. So they have a pretty generous free tier with Cloudflare, and they basically connect to GitHub. So if you have your GitHub repository saved and it has your Astro site in it, you just go to Cloudflare and connect it. And anytime there is a commit to the main branch, it will go and run Astro, generate your site, and host it all for you. So it's really sweet. And then another thing you can do with it is Cloudflare sells domain names, and their kind of mission is to sell them for cost. So if you go to GoDaddy or any of those, they're going to be like twice as much. So that's an advantage too if you want to get a domain that's specific to you, what has your name in it or whatever. Okay, so I have not tried this in a browser, so hopefully everything is going to work okay. So GitHub Codespace. So basically, with a Codespace, you can actually open it for any repository. So you might notice on any repository, there is a button at the top right that's green. And it allows you to check out, but it also allows you to create a Codespace from that repository. And what happens is that Codespace generates a container on the server, and it lets you save your files there, and it keeps them saved. And then if you want to push those changes to the repository, there's a place to commit them, and they'll go into the repository. So you could use this permanently to have no programs on your computer and just do it through the browser. And you can have your own site hosted and generated automatically and deployed automatically. Any questions so far?
Were you saying that this was like a competitor to GoDaddy, or like you're saying if we wanted to intend to use GoDaddy?
Yeah, so there's two things we're going to be using today. Through the Codespace, we're going to be doing the editing, and that should be free. They have higher cores that you can get if you have a plan, so your server will be a little faster. And then for deployment, we're going to use a service called Cloudflare. Yeah, so Cloudflare is really easy to manage, and I've used it for a long time, and it's so great. Okay, so let's, I guess we're kind of in the West, so we'll do US West, and we'll just create Codespace. This will probably take a couple of minutes. Any questions while this is spinning up? Hopefully you've clicked this and you've got it going. Yeah. They have a free tier. Yeah, it's a free tier. Yeah, as far as I know, when you use a Codespace, it can't accidentally rack up charges. Especially because the virtual container is only active until you idle out. So you don't have to worry about turning it off or anything. It'll just turn off whenever you're done. I've used like Gitpod, for example, and theirs is pretty good as well. But some of the other ones, they're pretty terrible about telling you when you're done and spinning up a new one. And you can see from this, it does take a little while. Let's see, how can I hide this? You got it?
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, I must have missed it. Did you get through the kind of portfolio themes through the showcase section or what?
Yeah, so in the showcase section, we clicked on the view on GitHub link. And then we clicked on the open in Codespaces. And I really don't know how to hide this. Does anybody know by chance?
I think if you click the green arrow on the screen share, that's loading.
Is that what you meant right there?
The green, oh, that's.
Oh no. Oh, there we go.
You had it open.
Well, then I won't be able to click on anything.
I think he's right. I think options that are hard. I've only ever done this on Windows.
Oh, there we go. Hide floating meeting controls. Okay. Press escape. Okay. Cool. No escape. Okay, so who has used VS Code before? Because that's what's popping up here. Great. Okay. So the nice thing about VS Code is that it's written in web technology. So when you run it locally on a desktop app, it's actually using Electron to render it as a web page. So when you pull it up in a code space or on Gitpod or wherever you're using it, it automatically is the exact same. So you'll enjoy the same features whether you're using on the browser or you download the desktop app. Okay, let's make this bigger. Okay, perfect. Actually, yeah, let me make it a little smaller here. All right. So you can see as part of this repository, it has a special file in it that tells Codespaces what to do. So it checked out the repository for us. We're in the repository looking at the files on the left. We have one single page or file open to edit. And then down here we have a terminal. So it automatically opened the terminal. It automatically ran this command, Astro dev, and it automatically puts a browser over here. So that we're like a browser within a browser here. And you can actually see what the code is doing. If you are not in this situation and you're not using this browser, you can go to, for example, this localhost address would let you view it all also. That's helpful if you have like a second screen or whatever, you want to have the site in one screen and the code in another screen. So I'm going to make this smaller, but basically what's going to happen is it's watching for file changes. So anytime we change a file, it's going to automatically rebuild and it's going to update the tab on the right that shows us what it looks like. Okay. Any questions so far? There is. So if you come into extensions, it's just called Astro. So, and that's a good point to bring up here. Right here, you may notice this looks a lot like JavaScript or TypeScript, and it is. And then down here, this looks like HTML or JSX, and it is. The difference is if you have ever used React, that you have a component file. This is the Astro file, .astro. So a component file would import and do these things in it, but then it would have a function that returns this content. So basically the only thing special about the .astro is that it starts with the dash 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 at the top. And then once you've done all of the code imports and logic that you want to do, you just do another dash dash dash. And then after that, all the content after that is what gets rendered. So that's sort of how these files work. You actually don't even need to edit this file though, unless you get a little more into changing the structure of the website or something like that. Any questions on that? Okay, great. All right. So you can see this is functioning. It's got a little drop down here. I'm guessing that because our window is so small, if we make our window bigger, yeah. So on a bigger browser tab or browser window, you'll see kind of this nice thing here. And you can see how fast the pages are loading. It's loading up plain HTML. And so it's just pretty much instant, which is really nice. And this template comes with a light theme, dark theme. That's kind of cool. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and change this right here where it says my name is. And the place you want to go to where all the content is called content. And inside content, you'll find configuration. You probably don't have to do anything with this. This, for example, defines that we have a collection called content. In a blog, you'd have a collection called posts. You might have a collection called pages. So the Astro calls these collections, and basically it would be the website slash pages or slash blog or posts or whatever. You can determine where it's going to be at. Okay. So inside of content, we have one called work. And so let's see what we have in here, if we can find the main page here. And actually, I wonder if it's in here. Yeah. Yeah, so actually this homepage is in the index.astro. And then we'll get into clicking on some of these pages down here. And those will go to markdown files, and we'll show how to edit those. Okay, so let's first change this. So my name is. Okay, so I've made a change. It actually is actually saving after I stop typing for a little while. You can turn that off if you want, but it's pretty cool. What should we say for the tagline?
That's
Okay. All right. And then, yeah, this one here has home, work, about. Okay. Okay, so we've edited this page. Great. Let's go and, yeah, let's edit this one. So I'm going to click over to this page so we can see what it looks like. So this is just the main page, and I clicked on work. And then on the work page, I'm clicking on this particular page. Okay, so you can see we have kind of this header here. So it's got a built-in header that stays there all the time. And then let's look over here. We have one called Bloom Box. So this is going to be the content. Okay, so for their markdown files, there's actually something similar to the .astro files. So you can see that there's 3 dashes at the beginning. Then you have all of this metadata about the page. So you have like the page title, and that will show up in links and in the title of the tab. You can have publish date and modified date. You can specify an image to use as a representation of the page. I think it might even be for SEO too. And then you get this field description. And so on a listing page, like a list of your blog articles, it would have the description underneath. You can give it some tags. And the blog ones, for example, have a tag page where you can click on a tag, and it'll show you all the pages with that tag. And then we've got the closing 3 dashes. So the top part where it's in between the 3 dashes, that's not going to display on the page anywhere. What happens here is we have the content in this. So actually, maybe what I should say better about this is this top part, somebody has configured this collection, which is their work or their portfolio to accept some things, including image and image alt. And they've said in the template that this image should show up down here, right under the beginning. It should show the description here. It's showing the tags that we created, dev, branding, and backend. So we could do something like this to change the tag. And we can do something like this to change the title. And you can see it's kind of pulling that info at the top of the markdown file in there. So then, yeah, go ahead.
You didn't specify the room that or just keep the contents of any title.
Yeah, as long as it's in the 3 dashes, you're good. You'll notice that with some of this, you have to have either a pipe or actually maybe it still works. You can do quotes or pipes for multi-line strings. Okay, so the template kind of ends this special stuff like the image here, and then you can see all of our code right here. So for example, we can put in a list. Okay, so let's see. So if you haven't used Markdown before, it's just basically a really kind of obvious way to change the content on a page without knowing HTML. So for example, I can come in here and put two hash marks, and it's going to make this into a header, second level header. If there's 3 hashes, it's a 3rd level header and so on. And these bullets come from just these dashes. So if you have a space above, some dashes, and a space below, then it'll make a list for you.
The same markdown that you would use for readme.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, what we can do is do something like this. It's like npx astro create template. Okay. So it might, yeah, so it's kind of cool. It already supports coloring, which is nice. If you're a tech blogger, you can just start writing code in the middle of your blog articles.
Something I've always been curious about, does Markdown support copy button for the code sections?
So it can. So Markdown by itself, there's no indication or anything that you want a copy button. It's up to a template. So if you want this, if this template supports it, for example, Astro that I did for my website, it has a little copy button. And I didn't do anything to make that happen. I just literally did 3 backticks and then HTML, close the backticks, and I write the code in there, and it makes it all nice and colored. Other questions? Yeah.
So when I initially, this was my first time seeing Astro, it kind of looked like it was advertised as maybe a competitor to React or Angular or something. But this looks like a lot like React. So is this more akin to Next.js or Remix or something like that that's kind of built on React?
Yeah, it's a meta framework on top of React. I mean, no, it's not on top of React. It's on top of JSX. So JSX syntax is something that React and Quick and Astro all use. So basically, when you are firing this up, the main difference between Remix and Next and just the plain React is that Astro always compiles to HTML files. So it's only for websites that don't have any forms that they need to process that would require server actions. And you can add that, but all the pages it's going to generate for you are static.
So you can add JavaScript to it.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, how does it work if you add JavaScript?
Yeah, so when you add JavaScript, you would add it somewhere in one of the Astro files. And I'm not exactly sure. So here's, it just has style.
I think it's at the top.
Yeah, so this runs at build time. All the stuff up here runs at build time. If you want something to run while on the page, I can't remember. I think you just say client. I think you say like Astro.
That makes sense. So you're telling me, hey, this is gonna be client. Part of this client.
Yes. Yeah, and that's one thing that they've done that's really cool is they invented this idea islands, where you can have a dynamic part of the page, and all you have to do is tell it, hey, this is going to be dynamic, and it can render the entire rest of the page and build that, and that's static, but then know that it has to do some automatic work on the back end every time it shows a certain block.
Like server components in Next.js.
Yeah. Great. So let's go into Cloudflare. Who has a Cloudflare account already? Anyone?
And is it possible to have Astro export your HTML files for you and then you send anywhere like on S3 or something?
Yeah, it's like npm run build. So once you're happy with how things look, you say build, and it will give you a single folder that you can copy anywhere.
Can you use CI/CD?
Yeah, I mean, Cloudflare does it, Vercel does it, but Vercel, I don't know about their free tier, what they allow you to do.
Right. We use Vercel quite a bit. Do they work with non-Next.js apps?
Yeah. Yeah, you can run anything on there. They have Docker, they support Docker. All right. Okay. So if you haven't created an account, you can create one now if you want. Basically, what happens here is just when you get to your account, on the left side, you have this menu. And one of the things on the menu is workers and pages. So if I click on workers and pages, I can see all these different things going on here. So you can see this that I just created last week. This is my blog on here using Astro. So basically, to create an application, all you do is say create application, and then it gives you a bunch of different things, templates that you can use, but you don't need to do any of that. You can click on pages, and the nice thing is you can just connect it to Git, and it looks like it works with GitLab as well.
Oh.
So on the left, we have workers and pages, and then you have to click on pages. So there's workers and pages. So under pages, all you do is say connect to Git. And I've already connected, but you would normally go through the GitHub auth process, log in with GitHub. Then you can come in here and select a repository. I've only given it access to one repository, so that's why it only shows one. but it would show all of the repositories you give it access to. And you just click on it. And it asks you a few questions. You can just do all the defaults. And you say done. And from that moment on, it'll start deploying. And anytime you make a commit to main, then you will get the site automatically updating.
So you use this with your Astro and then you dump it to your local, and then you just like added it to Cloudflare?
Yeah, so the nice thing is you don't have to do anything locally as long as it's on GitHub. So what we didn't show, and let's go back and show this real quick. So on here, we can say source control and open repository. And here we go. Okay, and so now I can commit this. Okay. So I like to just do commit and sync all the time. And do you want to commit all the changes, even if you haven't selected the changes? That's always. And just double checks with you the first time that you really want to save your changes. Okay. So now I'm assuming that this is going to be on my GitHub. So when you open in CodeSpace, it automatically forks the repository. So let's open github.com and we'll go to, let's see, recent activity. Let's see, Astro. Yeah, this one. So this is the one we just created tonight. This you can see is where you can access the code space. So right now I'm on the code space. It's called this. And if I wasn't on the code space, there would be a button here to open it up again. And so we've pushed these changes. So if we go in here and look, so go to examples. Oh, we're in the parent. Okay, so we're like in a parent one. Anyway, so I would come into Cloudflare, and this one was just called Astro. But I'd come into Cloudflare and there'd be an item here that said Astro, the name of this that I created. And then I choose that repository, and then it's going to ask you a few questions, but you can just leave everything default. And then you click setup, and it's going to deploy your site. Anytime you want to make changes to it, like I said, you can just come back here and you can open up your code space again, right here. You probably don't want to open up multiple. So if you come to this the second time, make sure you choose one that's used last. And it will persist any changes you have, but you want to make sure that you take any changes that you really want to be live and commit those, and those will go on live. And of course, if you wanted to make experiments and make sure you save those, you can create another branch and put the branch, name it whatever you want, and that will not be connected to Cloudflare. So Cloudflare only connects the main branch. So anytime you commit or merge into main, then you'll get the website updated. Cool. Any other questions? Yeah.
So you mentioned that the benefit of Astro is that it's on the server compiling, generating your HTML for you, so you're getting smaller web pages. And so it looks faster.
Yeah.
Rather than installing a bunch of JavaScript apps on the front end that then go on the your site.
Yeah.
Is the reason you mentioned that it's better for sites that are less dynamic, simply because if they were more dynamic, you would have to client render more things and then you start to lose out on the advantages.
Yeah, exactly, because you're gonna want to either access the database or do fetch calls to somewhere else. And if your application is primarily based on that kind of stuff and it's, you know, user login and they see different things every time they come, then that's where you would want to use something other than Astro. Although if you get into advanced, like I said, you can have a lot of things pre-rendered, like maybe a navigation even, or part of pages, and then only make an island is what they call it, where your dynamic application is server rendered. It's interesting though, because, you know, you think about WordPress and, you know, my blog was on WordPress before, and how many times did it update? It updated like once a week, right? And every time somebody requested a page, it was going into the database and it was fetching all this information, building the nav, building the post that you're looking at, loading up the comments, like all of these different things, right? And with Astro, it builds it ahead of time. And if you do want some dynamic things, you can integrate with other services I won't go into, but there are a lot out there for like chat widgets. So it's just a widget you put on, it's hosted by somebody else, and they handle, you know, posting the discussion and serving the discussion to you in a section of your page. You can use other services to make forms, and the forms go and do something, and maybe return some content to a dynamic part of your page. So you can, if you think about a lot of websites that don't change very often, this is a great way to go. And I wasn't super familiar with this until last week, but on Chrome, you can go into the dev tools and there's something called a lighthouse score. So several years ago, Google started saying, hey, as part of ranking your page and deciding how far up on the list of results to put it, we're going to assess how fast your website is. We're going to assess when a user loads it, how much time do they wait before they see something and before they see everything. And that will give you a score, and that can help you move you up or down on the list of results. So if you have a website where it's really important for people to come often, then it's such a great way to go, because you'll get 98 or 100% on those metrics. Yeah, so each template does its own thing. The one that we just looked at was Bootstrap, or sorry, was Tailwind. So, and you can always use plain CSS on any of them as well. Yeah, so API calls, what you'd want to do is, if it was something that you put in an island, then you can do a fetch request and populate that part of the page. So you can do stuff like that.
But it's server-side render.
Whatever you want to fetch and do, you can client-side render it, you can server-side render it, however you want to do it.
So you put your-
Yep. Yeah. Cool. Thanks so much for following along. Yeah, one more question. Yes. It automatically watches for a push to main, and I don't have to do anything to tell Cloudflare to deploy. It just starts building the site. It checks out the code and runs Astro build, takes the files that were resulting, and it deploys those to your site. Yeah, and if you use them for domain registration, you can just buy a domain here, and if it's with them, they can connect and point it to your pages automatically. If not, if it's hosted somewhere else, you have to go into that other place's DNS and connect it up. But this is nice too, because you can just buy a cheaper domain and then do whatever you want, point it to whichever pages you want.
Do you know the price for it?
Yeah, let's look for Oh, this is the wrong thing. I did this last time. This is register domains. So regular.com. Yeah, that's probably. Yeah, so regular.com currently costs under $10 a year. That's a year.
You think the, on the other ones, it's like $12
It depends on what on it.
well, like, for like the standard ones that are.
Yeah.
Well, 15, some use.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a really short one, if you want, like 100 plus for it.
Great. Thanks so much.